I would be good at it, but the idea of coddling the kind of self-regarding shit weasels that make up the talent pool of this business is beyond my ken and grasp. About a month ago or so, I was on a panel at a convention in which we were asked to discuss our work, and from a self-aware perspective, one of the participants seemed utterly incapable of seeing anything but utter and complete worship of that artist's own work. I've never been witness to such utterly guileless self-regard in my life. It was shocking to me. I mean, I used to be good looking enough to be a narcissist. Now I'm a solipsist. You know, I mean, they married me for a reason. You know, I was really cute. And I had this, you know, this presentation. You know, I mean, I've always been this way. I've always been verbal. And people tend to resent that and presume that I'm a criminal because I can express myself well. And you know what I'm talking about. And you know, it's like, you know, years ago, Jerry Jones took it upon himself to say something really shitty about me in public, in print. And I found myself standing at a urinal next to him at a convention once, and he said, just because you're a fucking loser doesn't give you the right to shit all over me. And we kissed and made up, because he's responsible for one of the 3 great books about comics. You know, Men of Tomorrow? Anybody? Show of hands, Men of Tomorrow. Wow, okay. Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. It's Superman by Tom DeHaven. I knew you had. Good. Would you please tell these fucking friends of yours how good this fucking book is? For Christ's sake. Tom DeHaven, I have nothing invested in this. It's the last Superman book that made me cry. I literally wept flying over Iowa, okay? Don't look at him, look at me. Just kidding. So I'm unbearable, you know? I mean, I'm a good person, but not very nice. And comic books is made up of a lot of nice people who are not very good, okay? A lot of people in comics are really nice. They're really nice people. They're nice, okay? But they would fuck you in the ass and rape your kids without a moment's hesitation if they thought it would get them $1, okay? They're greedy, self-centered, credit gouging, credit grubbing, selfish nihilists who, in a marketplace that mistakes skepticism for cynicism. I am not a cynic. If I were a cynic, I would lie to you. I would tell you, hey, great to see you, and everything's just fucking fine. Yeah. But I'm not that guy. Because I can't remember the lies I told you last night, this morning, so I might as well just cover it with the truth and hope you're not paying attention. You know, my wife spent the first 5 years of our relationship apologizing for me because I said these horrible things to people. Until she finally realized that nobody was listening. That everybody thought I was kidding, and she knows damn well I'm not. You know, I mean, some people have Tourette's. I have Tourette's. and it's not serving me well. You know, I had a confrontation last night with one of my colleagues in the lobby. It almost came to blows. And I'm not a fighter, I'm a pussy. And who took a private disagreement. I used the word disagreement in the context of air quotes, which I never use. And made it public a couple of weeks ago on the internet. And I asked him, he was very angry. I asked him whether he felt that it was he had moved on beyond the idea of knowing that all the colleagues in the profession knew that he was a tool. Now it's important that the enthusiasts should know that he was a complete asshole as well. We'll see. I'll see how public it goes. I didn't name names. That's the difference. It's none of your business. You can find out from him. But I'm not easy to like, you know, and my work doesn't do what most comic book work does. Most comic book work congratulates you for being there, you know? It's like, I once wrote a piece about television, which defined television as a medium, and this is not we are living now in the best age of television. Television is fantastic. I love TV. If television were a woman, I'd sell my soul to be owned in body and soul by it. I love TV. To my wife's detriment, she just, why are you watching this shit? You know, but I was working in TV when it was still just the tail end of shit. And I said, the television is the medium that congratulates you for being too hip for television. And when you're in it, they've got you by the balls. And comic books are an aspirational medium. Most of the stuff that's really popular, because it's certainly not meritocratic, most of the stuff that's popular is the sort of stuff you would do if you could. Because if comic books were meritocracy, Jose Garcia Lopez would be regarded as the end game, the alpha and omega. Instead, he's a guy that most people, yeah. But where's that issue of Wildstorm? That kind of stuff, So, it's like rock and roll. The really good rock and roll musicians aren't really super popular. The rock and roll musicians who are popular are guys who look like you, what you would do if you could get your shit together on a Saturday night. Questions? Yes. Stand up, please.
Right, so
I love your T-shirt, by the way. I'm serious. It reminds me of home.
The great concert last night.
What show?
Rap Work.
Who?
Rap Work.
Who? I can't see. I'm 65 fucking years old. I can't see. What are you kidding?
That's my fucking father. Jesus.
What is it? Oh, fun on the Autobahn. Oh, God, now I know how old you are.
So, there's this trend where all these independent writers got swept up by the big two. They took the money, they did work for hire, they got out, they've gone back to Image or Dynamite or Boom, and now the trend seems to be the race for licensed properties, because there's tons of outlets now for licensed properties. Yahoo, YouTube is trying to get started to compete with Netflix, you got started to compete with HBO. So what's going on? Are you chasing licensed properties?
No.
Do you have an opinion?
No, I accept the fact that here's just a 5-minute self-deprecation followed by hubris. The first 10 years of my career is an uneven source of enormous embarrassment and shame to me. And besides that, I was on a panel at San Diego Convention called that 70s panel. And my 70s work, as I said then, was the equivalent of barber college, which is I had the tools in my hand, but I get really shitty haircuts.
Star Wars.
Yes. And it has poisoned my life, of course, because most people in comics who know me at all know me from that work. Trust me, okay? And what ultimately happened is that I made enough money in television to get a pension and a 401k and real estate. So I can pretty much do what I want, I still have to make a living. I can live on my pension, but I don't want to. I'm too fucking snobby. And I now, if you buy licensed properties, you mean by creating IP?
Yes.
Yes. But I am utterly and completely luckless in the realm of IP. And clearly, I fucked over the wrong demigod when I was younger. I am paying the karmic price for this. I've gotten options on some things, but I can't seem to get fucking arrested. There are people interested in various properties, but my work is so fucking weird. I watch Preacher on AMC, and I really had to gird myself to watch it because I was surprised by how much I liked it. I'm not a fan of that sort of thing, and I'm so resentful of the fact that they got that show made. Why haven't I been noticed by someone like that guy? And I know. Look, this is that self-deprecation of the Star Wars stuff. Then comes around and says, I know how good I am now. I also know how influential my work is. To a certain extent, I'm like Dawn Powell, who was a writer of the 1940s and 50s, who was deeply influential on people who no one knows. I'm like Lester Young, who's a great saxophone player who influenced an entire generation of white guys who barely acknowledged his existence. And I'm that guy. You can't know how many times I do interviews with culturally amnesiac shitweasels who had absolutely no clue when they ask me a question whether I borrowed this particular trope or this particular technique or effect from this guy or that guy. Next thing you know, they got it from me, and next time you talk to someone of my age, generation, and experience, you might want to do some fucking research on who you're talking to, you selfish cockbag. But yes, we always have that wish dream. But to that extent, I can't bring myself to do the idea of taking what I've been doing commercially here and doing exactly the same thing over here with a different name. That seems cynical. People take me to task frequently for drawing the same hero, as if it's an accident, as if I didn't notice. As if it isn't a conscious choice that I make every fucking day. There's a reason, because it's a branding form. My heroes are based on a conflation of Henry Fonda, William Holden, and James Garner. Holden, because he represents, all three of those men, Fonda in particular, because they represent a kind of wise guy American decency. Fonda represents a form of American decency that is transcendent, made even greater by the fact that apparently in real life he was a dick, you know. But he really personified American decency. And everything from Drums Along the Mohawk to the Caine Mutiny to the Lady Eve, okay? William Holden takes that American decency and translates it to a wise guy sensibility, a more urban wise guy sensibility, from Golden Boy to Sunset Boulevard to more specifically Solid 17, okay? And James Garner is the archetypal post-war liberal who comes out of a Woody Guthrie world, born in Okemah, Oklahoma, raised in Woody Guthrie's world, who takes those two conflations, the fondness and the William Holdenness, and conflates them into a self-aware wise guy who is a physical coward, but is morally brave. And that's my hero. And that's why he looks like that. And in the Neil Simon universe, I think Yiddish and go British. Okay? None of these people who take me to task for this note the fact that I surround that guy, that iconic symbol, with a sprawl of genuinely interesting characters, all of whom look different. That I don't have Betty and Veronica in my world. That all my characters are not archetypes. You know? Because it's a genre-based medium. And there are certain rules that must be obeyed to achieve success in the context of mainstream comics. And those rules have absolutely no interest or value to me. My heroes are not likable. My villains are much better looking. I don't believe in the concept of heroes and villains. My villains believe in their heart of hearts that they're really the hero of the book. Because that's how villains really behave. When I hear one more fucking piece of person tell me how crazy Hitler was, I will reach for my gun with Mao. Hitler was not crazy. Hitler was a politician who knew his audience. And he knew exactly who to point out for his audience to attack. He had more in common with the Wizard of Oz than he did with Nero. And I have a real aversion to the concept of heroes and villains. It's just bullshit. But comic books live on this idea. They think, I mean, back to that Batman, had a bad day when he was 8 metaphor. I mean, that's really all it is. I had a lot of bad days when I was 8. I grew up in Brooklyn. He's a guy who watches his parents cut down. He's traumatized. And then rather than taking the bull by the horns and investing this mass billion in the private sector, or creating a dynasty like the Kennedys, to serve social justice, real social justice, as opposed to the bullshit best for social justice in the modern world today, he instead dresses up like a bondage freak, talks like this, and invests and buys all these insanely expensive toys so that he can beat the shit out of people who are bad because of the way they look. He doesn't know them, but they're bad because he can identify, like Jews in Germany. Bear in mind, none of this was happening in my head when I was voraciously reading Batman comics. I was a Golden Age collector, and I loved Batman comics. Batman in my head will always be drawn by Dick Sprang. It's like, the Chester Gould of comics. But I can't write that stuff without at least an element of irony. Which is why when I did that Batman Dark Allegiances book, Batman's mom and dad were people who basically protected Sacco and Vanzetti from the cops. And he ended up being Walt Disney. So, I can't bring myself to do these things without irony. And comics are bereft of irony. They have facetious diffidence in lieu of irony. Okay? The modern generation, and I mean, I'm 1 foot and on stage right, heading off, being shoved out by the 40-year-olds. And the 40-year-olds aren't aware of the fact that they're going to be socially ruined and fucked by the 20-year-olds. I'm dealing with a culture that has a genuine aversion to genuine irony, but believes that facetious diffidence is a form of irony. They're insulted by genuine irony because it's an audience that is, an audience in a culture that is easily manipulated, easily flattered, and easily hurt. As if there is a God-given constitutional right to not have your feelings hurt. Man the fuck up. Life is rough. It is not, it is not a theme park. I was telling Karen about the adulting classes. You read adulting classes? Did I tell you about this?
I'm not sure you did.
Okay. There's a what's going on campuses right now, and comics and campus culture are very deeply connected. I mean, they really are, because and what's going on college campuses right now is that apparently counselors are being surfeited and ruined by their schedules are full. They're having to hire more people because you've got 18 and 19-year-old kids coming to college who have no idea how to behave in a venue in which they are on their own. Because I think they were expecting summer camp. And I'm constantly affronted by people who believe in a series of rights that don't exist. You know, I mean, I've got a Heroes Initiative bucket on my desk, my table at the convention. And I invite people to feel guilty enough to support and enable grasshoppers. You know, I'm an ant. You know, I knew at 35 that I had nothing going on, that I had to do something about it so that I would be able to live in this life without supporting myself on cat food and macaroni and cheese casseroles. A lot of guys are popes of hubris who completely and totally believe. Consider the irony, right? You know, I mean irony, not facetious diffidence, of living on the press releases and worship of an audience for which you have contempt. That is 90% of the talent pool in the comic book business today. Okay? Consider the way you're treated by most people at a comic book convention when you go up to a table. Those of you who come to my table know that I engage with you all the time, right? I'm a chatty guy. I like people, you know, on their own terms. And I say to you more than once that the convention is my client. You're my client's customers. I'm here to be of service to you. And that doesn't include expecting to be told how fucking wonderful I am. Really. Because I don't really care. I'm a member of a spiritual fellowship, one of whose tenets is, what you think of me is none of my fucking business. It's really healthy. It's really hard. Because I want to be loved. I'm just not willing to work hard at it. But for the most part, I guarantee, when you go to a comic book artist's table, some of you will frequently come away feeling, if not hurt, then sort of just disregarded. Is that a reasonable thing to say? I mean, some of you feel that way? Okay. Because these guys take you for granted. I don't take you for granted. I don't take your praise seriously. Because it means I also have to think that you like this schmuck that I have out of contempt for. I'm not going to go for that, you know. No. But I treat you like a person. And that's really what it's about. Because I know what it feels like to be on that side of the table. And most of those guys too, but they don't give a fuck. You know? It's important for us to be self-aware and right-sized, in my opinion. The idea of deriving monomania from being the world's best comic book artist is kind of like being the world's tallest midget. It's just not that big a deal. One of the things that has to be remembered is that this is a very frivolous business that is, from a skill set perspective, very difficult to do. And my wife, who has never read a comic book in her life, has only the vaguest understanding of what I do, of what it is. I mean, from her perspective, it has more to do with shamanism than craft. Okay? She's an RN. And I make shit. Like that. And being right-sized about it is really healthy for me. Because it means I'm not walking around, I don't depend on your faith. You know, it means I'm on my own. And that if you like me, great. If you don't, I wish you did, but okay. You know, because, you know, I used to say 2 weeks of good ink when I go. My obit, I'm figuring Wednesday afternoon, upper left New York Times. I've already got the headline written. Want to hear it? Okay. Howard Chaykin, cartoonist, dies. Fucked up Star Wars comics, and who really gives a fuck about the rest of it anyway? I walked from the hotel, from the convention back to the hotel last night with someone who sort of tagged along with me, I had no idea why, who kept telling me how angry I seemed. And I'm just pragmatic. You know, my wife thinks I'm a pessimist, and I'm really not. I'm a realist. I'm right in the middle. You know, optimism seems utterly unjustified, as does pessimism. You know, it's like, I'm the luckiest motherfucker alive. I'm the least talented and least naturally skilled of my generation. Imagine what it's like in 1971, you come into comic books and there's Bernie Wrightson waiting for you. Just close your eyes and close your, just imagine what that's like. Imagine how humiliating that is. Just how shitty you are. Just like, holy shit, this guy can do anything. And Kaluda's there. Even Frank Brunner is better than me. You know, Alan Weiss. These guys who could draw like sons of bitches. Simonson comes along. I'm like, this knuckle-dragging fucking loser. Nothing going on. Nothing. Except for blind rage and hunger and shame. And those three things inform desire and effort. So yes, I pat myself on the back for learning not to be a knuckle-dragging, bottom-feeding, shitbird loser. And I teach myself a series of usable skills. And by the time those usable skills are available to me, my interest in the work that those usable skills could be applied to has ceased to exist. Gotta make a living, so I start doing other shit, you know? And the thing about which I am most proud is that I have managed to build a reasonable career as an outlier to the mainstream, you know? And an indication of how weird that outliership is when I was a guest at the San Diego Convention this year for the 7th time. And once again, they demonstrated they had no fucking idea what to do with me. No one. It's just, what do you do with this guy? You know? You know? I mean, I find myself perfectly charming and engaging. Unpleasant, but perfectly charming and engaging. So, someone else? Come on. Yes, sir.
Quick question.
Better be quick. Stand up. But so they can hear you too.
I want to know about Earth. Was it Final?
Oh yeah, the worst fucking show ever.
And Viper, was that the worst show?
Viper was nowhere nearly as bad as Earth Final Conflict.
Why was it so bad?
Oh, well.
Quickly, yeah.
You've opened a can of worms. All right.
Well, we'll go over like.
Oh no, I got hired in this show. In those days, the model of this model no longer exists. Although I found recently that it does exist. 5 seasons. That they're willing. I mean, for example, my understanding is that those WBDC shows are not really generating any real ratings numbers, but that they are generating enough that they can support a 5-year package to create an overseas package and a DVD package. And that was the syndicated model back in the 90s. And I was hired on Earth Final Conflict. My last month on Viper overlapped my first month on Earth Final Conflict. And I was hired by, I have no idea why they hired me. I was hired by a guy named Paul Gertz, who was the first vegan I ever met. And it means that to this day, whenever I meet a vegan, I have to stop and remind myself this isn't Paul. He's okay. Just because he's a vegan, he's not like Paul. Paul was a disbarred lawyer who had never written anything in his life, who was rewriting everybody on the show. It was the worst show ever. It was just dumb as shit. It was just ghastly. It was run from 3 places. Major Roddenberry, David Kirshner, who was producer of the Chucky franchise at the time, and Tribune Entertainment, who were my heroes, my champions. And I was number 3 on the show. I was number 3. And number 2 was a guy named George Gertz, who has since retired, who was old school, and just like, what the fuck, I got 2 more years of this, I'm just gonna roll, I don't care, you know? And I just like, I did what I was, and I did everything I was supposed to do, as I'd learned to do in the previous 10 years of working as a television producer. And I gave notes, because that's what you're supposed to do, you know? And I was called into the office on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and told that I was the most disliked man on the staff and not to come back, but I was still, and I left the office, never went in again, wrote 3 more episodes, collected a paycheck, and just didn't do anything. Paul Gertz hired his best friend from high school, who's never, to this day, never been produced, but 1 show. I asked him in a note session, I says, how does a director shoot as luck would have it? Okay. I hurt his feeling. Okay. And they had these aliens on the show, and I kept trying to explain to them that you can't name them with the same syllables. They can't all be called Ga and Dig. They have to be identified as characters. So I was fired from the show at the end of the season because Tribune fired Corey, the unproduced shit weasel, and Kirshner fired me. And I immediately rolled over into development on a TV series version of Escape from New York, which was the best year of my life in television. It was fantastic. And let me tell you how long ago this was. I was working with Kurt Russell, Deborah Hill, and John Carpenter. And I have a man crush on Kurt Russell. I really do. I love this guy so fucking much. He's the funniest guy, amazing. And we were talking about Gerard Butler, who plays Snake Plissken. That's how long ago this was. And it was great. But Earth's Final Conflict was the worst experience I've ever had professionally in my life. They were fucking apes. They were, I mean, I went back to work for the same company, not Kirshner, but the same people, and I hired the guy who had been my number one on a previous show to be my number two. Who they asked me to start firing. They started asking me to fire him 2 months into the production season, and I kept him on there for 3 months more, and he's never spoken to me since because I had to fire him. And I kept explaining to him that they were ignoring the model we had all grown up with. There's a model of writing television that requires a certain structure, the way you break a show, the way you do things. These guys had no idea what they were doing, and they just did it any way they wanted to. But Earth Final Conflict was shockingly bad, and it became. I mean, look, I was making a great paycheck. It was fantastic. You know, I wrote 3 more episodes and collected a weekly paycheck from Thanksgiving until June, and I was at home writing comics. It was great. There you go.
Didn't they claim Gene Roddenberry as like a lost thing?
It was kind of like inspired by an idea that fell out of Gene Roddenberry's ass while he was on life support. That was basically it. Yeah. It was just dumb as shit. It was so awful. I mean, it made L. Ron Hubbard stuff look coherent. You know, it was fantastic. You know, someone else. No? Come on, you big babies. You have no curiosity?
Yeah, another
Yeah.
one. All right, so is there anyone you don't hold in contempt in the comics profession?
Say what?
Is there anyone you don't hold in contempt in the
Oh,
comics
absolutely. It's a vast list.
Okay. So any names?
But if I list something they're omitted, you'll think I do. You know. Well, I mean, Walter Simonson, Mark Guggenheim, Mark Waid,
Yes.
Eduardo Riso, Jordy Burnett, Lionel Yu, Living and Dead.
Yes.
Living and Dead?
Sure, at the same time.
Alex Toth, Wallace Wood, John Severin, Harvey Kurtzman, who I dislike personally but regard as a god. I mean, there's a lot of guys I like, you know, but, you know, I mean, for example, one of the things that, I mean, I had 4 mentors and a rabbi. My mentors were Gil Kane, Wallace Wood, Neil Adams, and Greg Morrow. And my rabbi was Joe Orlando. Joe was the archetypal Guido. He was one of the best people in the world. I think he embarrassed people at DC Comics by his Guido-ness, and was that they should be ashamed of themselves. He was a fantastic man. He taught me how to navigate the world of corporate espionage. He was really just, I'm getting a little verklempt. I mean, one of the things you must understand is that I cry at everything. I'm a serious weeper. I was telling someone the story about my seeing production of Fiddler on the Roof about a month ago, and it was pathetic. I blubbered for literally 90 minutes, the first act, throughout it. Joe was a great guy, but the great unifying thought of those 4 men that were my rabbis, about my mentors, rather, none of them could write at all. They were terrible writers. And it was imperative to me that I knew I could identify good writing for what it was, but I didn't understand what was identified as good writing in comics. So I had to learn how to write, and I did, because I am available to be taught. One of the reasons why, with the exception of Simonson, nobody in my generation is still producing work of any real importance or value in the mainstream form, is giving up the ability to learn, giving up the ability to continue to be influenced. You know, and I'm never going to be the best draftsman. And it was like I said to Frank Show yesterday. Frank, I'll never draw as well as Frank does, but he'll never be able to put a picture together like I do. He'll never be able to support a page in terms of narrative, and have the cleverness and beauty that I can create by dint of supportive narrative. You know, What I do for a living that you guys like, whether you know it or not, is that when I do a page, there's something really special about the way the narrative on the page works and supports itself. There's a branding language built into that you guys like my stuff for the reason that I like my stuff, not because I do blowjobs or there's hot babes in it, but because I can tell a story visually in a way that's intriguing and clever. That's what keeps me awake in the morning. It gets me to my desk at 9 a.m. Okay. One more. Come on, you big babies. You.
All right.